The NHL trade deadline is fast approaching, and like all hockey fans, this can be a very worrying time. I mean, sure, this is where some teams could really make a push for the playoffs and add that missing piece that they think will help them make a deep run, but sometimes these deadline deals don't always work out how we all expected them to. Keeping that in mind, in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the worst trade deadline moves made by every single NHL team. The Anaheim Ducks 2008. Anaheim was in need of some defensive relief, so at the deadline they worked out a deal with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Anaheim received Ryan Whitney and sent Chris Kunitz to the Pittsburgh Penguins. This was a trade Anaheim made to help get their team to a cup contending form for that season. However, they ended up losing in the first round to Dallas, and later in that offseason, Whitney took his talents to the Edmonton Oilers. Chris Kunitz, on the other hand, became Sidney Crosby's wingman and not only won the Stanley Cup that year, but he went on to win a total of 3 cups with the Penguins. The Arizona Coyotes 2006. The Coyotes have a reputation for being quite an active team on trade deadline day. No real blockbuster moves, but no real busts either. However, in 2006, they traded away a draft pick that could have changed their franchise forever. Arizona received Oleg Kvasha and a conditional 5th round pick in 2006, which turned out to be Brett Bennett, and the Islanders received a 3rd round pick in 2006, which turned out to be none other than the annoying but very productive and skillful Brad Marchand. Kvasha was impressive with the Coyotes, notching 11 points in 15 games, but that's where he called it quits and went over to Russia to finish his career. As for Brett Bennett, well, he never ended up going pro. Now, as for the Islanders, well, they actually ended up moving that 3rd round pick thinking nothing of it, which was a hugely missed opportunity as Brad Marchand is still firing on all cylinders with the Boston Bruins and has tallied several seasons well over the 50-point mark and reached the 100-point mark in the 2018-2019 season. The Boston Bruins 2015. Trading Tampa Bay a 2nd round pick in 2015, who turned out to be Matthew Spencer, and a 2nd round pick in 2016, who turned out to be Boris Katchouk. Boston received Brett Connolly, who had a very underwhelming 27 points in 73 games played. Now, I know both Matthew Spencer and Boris Katchouk haven't really amounted to anything significant in the NHL, but where this becomes a bad trade is where you see who was available in those drafts. In 2015, Roope Hintz, Rasmus Andersson, and Vince Dunn were still on the board. And in 2016, Samuel Girard, Philip Hronek, and Carter Hart were still available. Obviously, there's always a chance your draft picks don't work out, but these are some highly skilled players that could have ended up making Boston an even more dominant team in the league today. The Buffalo Sabres 2014. Just after moving Ryan Miller to acquire Yaroslav Halak, the Sabres then packaged off Halak and a 3rd round pick in 2015 to Washington for a return of Michael Neuwirth and Rostislav Klesla. Now, although Halak struggled during his time in Washington, in the upcoming offseason, he made his way to the Islanders, where he posted his NHL best with a record of 38-17-4. He's also proved himself since then to be one of the league's best backup goalies there is. As for the players Buffalo acquired, Neuwirth posted a 6-19-3 record during his tenure in Buffalo before getting moved to the Islanders the next season and then was moved again to Philly, while Klesla decided not to report to the Sabres and never played in the NHL again. The Calgary Flames 2009. In 2009, Olli Jokinen was one of the top trade targets and has been an elite player in the league for several years, playing with Florida for the majority of his time, but landing in Arizona the year before this trade happened. The Calgary Flames received Olli Jokinen and a 3rd round pick in 2009 and sent over Matthew Lombardi, Brandon Prust, and a 1st round pick to Arizona for the 2010 draft. This seemed like a great deal, and it started off so well with Jokinen scoring 15 points in 19 games. However, in the following season, we saw Jokinen's play decline, and in 56 games played, he tallied 35 points and was eventually moved to the New York Rangers later that year. This was the start of Jokinen being tossed around the league for the rest of his career as he made his way back to Calgary, then to Winnipeg, then to Nashville, then to Toronto, which I have no recollection of, and apparently he played 6 games there, and then finally landing in St. Louis, where it all came to an end, playing 8 games. Now, that first round pick Calgary sent to Arizona didn't amount to much as the pick turned out to be Brandon Gormley. However, Vladimir Tarasenko was still on the board at that time, so things could have turned out a lot differently if they had chosen him. The Carolina Hurricanes 2016. Now, this turned out to be a bad deal for both teams involved. Carolina received Alexis Sarella and a second-round pick in 2016 and 2017, while the New York Rangers received four-time All-Star Eric Staal. Eric was the Hurricane star following in the footsteps of Ron Francis and Rod Brind'Amour, but in 2016, his game was declining, so Ron Francis, the GM at the time, decided it was time to move Staal while he still can get something back. Well, who he ended up getting back didn't really fill the void that Staal left behind. Sarella played just one playoff game with the Hurricanes before going back down to the AHL, and those two picks never amounted to anything substantial. And unfortunately for the Rangers, Staal played 20 games with them and tallied a very low 6 points before moving on to Minnesota, where he found his scoring touch once again. Out of the two teams involved, Carolina definitely took the biggest L, as they definitely could have squeezed a few more years out of Eric Staal. The Chicago Blackhawks 2016. In 2016, the Chicago Blackhawks were looking for some veteran help with hopes of making another cup run. So, in a trade with Montreal, they received Dale Weiss and Thomas Fleischmann and sent over Philip Deneau and a second-round pick in 2018, who turned out to be Alexander Romanov. Fast forward to the 2016 playoffs, and the Blackhawks couldn't get past the first round, making this trade a gamble that didn't quite pay off. Fleischmann had just 5 points in 19 regular season games played and just played 4 out of the 7 games in the postseason before retiring due to blood clots, and Weiss surprisingly did even less, recording 1 assist in the regular season and 1 goal in the postseason before he made his way out of Chicago and to the Philadelphia Flyers. The Colorado Avalanche 2006. Now, this seems like forever ago, but in 2006, Montreal had a very fortunate goalie situation. Cristobal Huet had taken over the goalie job from vet Jose Theodore, and Carey Price wasn't far behind. Theodore had proved to be a solid starting goalie in the league, so the Avalanche had high expectations. The Avalanche sent over David Abisher to Montreal, and Montreal sent over an injured Theodore. Once he got healthy, Theodore struggled with Colorado in the first season with 13 wins and 15 losses, and unfortunately, the following season didn't get much better. He posted 28 wins and 21 losses, which isn't the worst we've seen in the league, but for $6 million a year, the Avalanche needed more from him. Once his contract was up, Theodore was not brought back. The Columbus Blue Jackets 2019. If you don't remember the 2019 playoffs, let me help jog your memory. The Columbus Blue Jackets took the wild card spot and faced off against the first place Tampa Bay Lightning, and not only did they win that series, but they swept the Lightning 4-0. At the deadline that year, Columbus was looking to bring in some scoring depth, so they traded away Anthony Duclair and second-round picks in 2020 and 2021 to Ottawa for Ryan Dzingel. For Columbus, they thought they were getting some depth from Dzingel, as he was having himself a solid season with 44 points in 57 games. But with Columbus, he only posted 12 points in 21 games played, and even though the Blue Jackets swept the Lightning in the first round, Dzingel only contributed 1 point in the 9 playoff games he played with them. After that half season with Columbus, Dzingel moved around the league quite a bit and never got back to that 40-point production mark. The Dallas Stars 2011. Now, part of me wanted to skip this as I don't think it compares to the others on the list, but it's worth mentioning, and then we'll get to the next one, which is huge. In 2011, the Dallas Stars sent James Neal and Matt Niskanen to the Penguins for Alex Goligoski. Now, like I said, this isn't a horrible trade, but the Penguins definitely got the better end of the deal, as Neal put up some of his best seasons with the Penguins. He recorded a career-high 40 goals and 81 points in the 2011-2012 season. Niskanen spent 4 seasons with the Penguins, becoming a shutdown defender and flexing his offensive skills in the 2013-2014 season with a career-high 46 points. As for Goligoski, he spent 6 years in Dallas where he played great, almost getting over 30 points every season he was there. Dallas definitely did not lose here, but they just would have been better off keeping Neal and Matt Niskanen. The Detroit Red Wings 2012. Now this one has to hurt. The Red Wings have made a reputation for themselves as a team who isn't afraid to move first-round picks, and in 2012, they did it again. Hoping to add a spark to their lineup, the Red Wings brought in Kyle Quincy from Tampa Bay in exchange for Sebastian Piché and a 2012 first-round pick. Now, who did that first-round pick turn out to be? Oh, just Vezina-winning, two-time Stanley Cup hoisting Andrei Vasilevskiy. As for Quincy, the best year he had after the Red Wings acquired him was only 18 points in the 2014-2015 season. The Red Wings could have really used Vasilevskiy as they ran into some goalie trouble since then, relying on Peter Mrazek, Jonas Gustafsson, Jonathan Bernier, Thomas Greiss, Alex Nedeljkovic, Magnus Elberg, and Ville Husso. All that struggle just for Kyle Quincy? That has to hurt. Thank you for watching our videos. Now, we haven't even hit half the NHL teams, so if you want to see more of this video series, let us know in the comment section below.